The conversations so far have covered farming, water, geopolitics, slightly, a little bit of AI, but we're getting right into the intersection of all these different topics now. Designing artificial intelligence for dirt, data, and decision making. We're drawing on international examples because, unlike other sectors, agriculture is biological, dynamic, and deeply context dependent, requiring AI to work alongside changing weather, soils, ecosystem, animal behaviour, and of course there's these fickle things called humans. As part of this session, we've got, so I'm going to ask our panel to come up at this stage. We've got Stefan Hajkowicz, we've got Dr. Sophia Duan, we've got Edward Barraclough, and the wonderful Ben Finkel to lead this panel. He's the MD of the Australian Regional AI Network as our moderator. So let's give him a huge round of applause.
Hello, everybody. I think everyone should have the chance of just coming up here and sitting for a bit because it's a nice perspective, actually, isn't it? Thank you for making the time this afternoon to drop in and sit into this session. It's going to be quite a conversational discussion, and we're probably going to cover some topics that were identified then, but probably quite a few others that we'll just stream through. So, as Ollie was saying, I am the Managing Director for the Australian Regional AI Network, and our core remit is to actually go out into regional Australia to demystify AI. And that happens through workshops and masterclasses and just general conversation. And the topic that often comes up is not necessarily what is AI, but how can it actually be applied to my farm, to my people? How can I design something that's uniquely mine? And that is really what we'll probably address a lot of today's discussion. There's about 3 or 4 themes that I'll bring up and we'll try and get into. Given the time, we'll see. And if there is actually anything pressing in the room, we're a small group here, so if you just wanted to yell it out, just yell it out. That's the kind of session. So we know that AI is transforming industries that run really on very stable and repeatable data, things like finance or logistics, or even digital advertising. But as Ollie was saying, and as we've all known, we're in it together, is that every paddock is different. You've got different processes for dealing with different conditions. You might have different rootstocks or soil types, and you might be expanding or contracting your operations. There's a lot that's going on. It's a very complex, very contextual environment. So adopting something new does require consultation, does require thinking through, and often in most agtech discussions we all generally have, they ask, does my neighbour have it? Is my neighbour using it? There's something a bit more personal about artificial intelligence through generative AI that we'll discuss, and that is allowing us to actually be a little bit more local and direct with situations. So the question is not whether AI is powerful. It is. The question is whether we're building it to the conditions of Australian farms. So to explore that, I've got 3 people on stage that have different perspectives, which is healthy. Stefan, as you was introduced, has spent nearly 3 decades at CSIRO, reading where industries are really heading. He's an author of global megatrends at CSIRO's recent AI with ROI guide, and he said to me when we were chatting that 2026 is really the year where cognitive automation gets real in agriculture, and that the shift is not to learn to code, but learn to reason and validate what AI tells you. Sophia researches AI adoption specifically at La Trobe and published a piece actually just last week. You can look it up. It's a good read. But what that article asks and the questions is something that the industry doesn't really talk enough about. And that is when AI becomes part of the everyday farm decisions, which we're starting to see is becoming a little bit more regular, who carries the risk? And if it does go wrong, how do you mitigate? And Edward, founder of Drone Hand. You probably all have met him today or yesterday as well, whilst walking through startup. But Ed grew on a livestock farm in New South Wales, and he's now building autonomous drone systems with offline AI for livestock monitoring. So together, we've got a four-star strategist who says the shift is here, a researcher asking who carries the risk, and a founder building offline AI because that's what the conditions are demanding. So we'll kick in with the first theme around hype versus reality. And I'll start with you, Stefan, because back in 2022, you told the meat processing industry that 80% of what we hear about AI is hype, but the other 20% is enough to change your world. Now, 3.5 years later, has that ratio shifted?
You remembered. Wow. What else have you dug up from my past? I think we are accepting more broadly. I did a session earlier and I tested the audience about hype versus reality. More broadly, there is a perception that yes, this is upending a lot of what we know and how we learned previously, how we made decisions, how we analysed data, and how we did stuff. I think that the companies I work with, the universities, what we're seeing is an acceptance of that. And as we move into 2026, I think it's this get real factor around it about putting it to work for our careers, for our businesses, and making it actually do useful stuff is really where we're at with this. We're all amazed by it, but it's that turn these AI models into practical, useful business applications, which is hard and challenging, but really is starting to happen, and I think is going to happen very quickly. So yes, the statement I think still holds, but that we're really seeing what that 20% bit is, and I think there is a broad-based acceptance from board level down that this is a profound shift.
And you mentioned the cognitive automation, so the back office aspect of things from a farm perspective. Is there a gap between the opportunity in adopting in the back office than there is in the field? Because we've got both worlds out there on display in the forum. But
I wrote the National Roadmap on Artificial Intelligence, which was published back in 2020. I did the ethics framework as well at the National Roadmap. We got parts right, but we got a lot wrong. And a lot of what we got wrong was how good these generalized AI models would become. How you could, as an architect, prompt Claude or ChatGPT to do something, or as a doctor or as a lawyer, and you were getting really good professional level or above level responses out of it. That's not what we saw happening. Cognitive automation has moved way faster, and I think we are at the point where we're looking at whole government agencies or significant parts of a company, and we're saying, right, this could be rethought with AI. We can automate a lot more of what's going on here, and hopefully, if done well, shift people into better roles that are more interesting and continue to train and upskill. That's the hope that it has that way. Field robotics, not so. The chat GPT of robots doesn't exist and is looking like it's having a hard time coming. I remember back in 2010 when Google's car passed the driving course in the Nevada state government thing through the witches' hats. It had to do the test and it got a driver's license. We were all like, 2020, we'll see full automation on the roads. And it looked like a feasible technological pathway in that bit by bit we would get better and better. But today's automated vehicles, there's been some tragedies recently, but today we'll still find a puddle on the road or an upturned witch's hat and have to stop and not know what to do with it. And it's more and more machine learning doesn't seem to be necessarily solving that problem. We might see automation, but it was a lot harder to achieve. The field robotics, the agricultural robot that we can ask to just do anything is the holy grail of robotics, the ChatGPT, where it knows what a plant is, it knows how to dig or spray or chop or apply soil treatments. That does not seem to be coming anytime soon. On the other hand, though, on cognitive automation, it's just gone way faster than we would have expected. The ability for it to handle a really out there question, complex, give a human level response has exceeded expectations. And I think by 2030 has even gone a lot further.
So Sophia, Stefan's painting a picture of rapid change. How are you seeing that translate on the ground? You've done a few soil CRC research. How are you sensing the conversation around adoption?
Yeah, thank you, Ben. And I think when it comes to the AI adoption, like in agriculture, it's no different from other technology adoptions across the board. No matter how advanced the technology is, like today, and the AI models, it keeps changing. At the end of the day, it's still the human who's going to use the technology, who's going to adopt technology, especially in like for farming. It comes to the human side is like, how easy it is to use the technology, ease of use, and what is a perceived usefulness. So how useful it is and how it could improve my like workflows in farming, and also or what about the risk and what risk I'm going to bear like at the end of the day. So those are from the technical like point of view. And from the farming side, it's more about the digital capabilities and whether they are ready to adopt those technologies, because we know like not everyone is at the same level of that ready for the technology adoption. Some of the farmers or producers, they are very high tech, like Ed, right? So they can develop their own models and they can adopt those AI models very quickly, hands-on. But there are a lot of others and who maybe are not that technology savvy, so we should say. So it comes to them about, okay, well, how easy can I can get these technologies and how to fit in the existing systems of the farming. I attended a session like yesterday. I saw a lot of comments coming up. So, and one principle that is good, a good principle I could see is to the KISS principle.
Keep it simple, stupid?
Yes. I'll just keep it simple. So I think, so this is the fundamental like human problem, not the technology problem. But they need to know, farmer or producers, they need to know how I'm going to use those technologies in farming or at work.
So a capability gap.
Yes.
And that comes down to a confidence level as well in trusting, because we've been told that integration is a heavy weight on any business change. Integration is not necessarily as challenging when you're having a natural language conversation with a large language model. So the capability, so is it the curiosity, is it the confidence in actually trialing and playing and having a go at it? Because ultimately that's what we're in at the moment. We're in the generation of do-it-yourself when it comes to AI. So.
Yeah. So capability problem, and also where there's a transition, we can see, well, let me take, for example, is like, there is a capability or difference when about 10 years ago, we did some field work. Then we realized that about the technology readiness or capability. So we know, like, well, some of the farmers, they are not using, back in 10 years ago, they are not even using mobile phone that often. So when you talk about adopting these, advanced technologies, that they don't know, how to adopt, like AI, how to use AI, right? So yeah, it's about awareness and also the capability. And now I'm talking to Ed like this morning about the transition of the aging population, and well, now there's a mixed, like where there is a combination of different requirements of the capability like required. On one hand is like those older generations, right? But on the other hand, we do have this upcoming new generations and Gen X, Gen Z. So they're born in digital, then they have different,
The difference is that the older generation will be less, the AI slop is probably going to be less with that generation who read and validate and reason, which we'll talk about in a minute as part of the co-designing, because that is very critical for us to appreciate that the context we bring to the conversation, then we'll have something to help synthesize that. But then we need to challenge it as well. Ed, you famous for saying that you don't even show tech until you've had a conversation around the problem and the pain point. You're hearing a lot of movement, a lot of change, a lot of things happening. How is that functionally really happening? And it's a conversation between yourself with a product. Ultimately, you want to put in the hands of the grower, but you're coming from a different mindset, different approach.
Yeah, so with building drone hands, I mean, we are essentially just a machine learning image recognition software company, and everything that we are doing...
You just said just.
Well, we're not a large language model. We're not AI in that sense. We are very much responsive machine learning models around image recognition. We just happen to use autonomous drones and fixed cameras as a vector for that. And all of that is, as Sophia said, all of that it can be very, very daunting for an older, maybe more conservative or traditional farmer. But that's not to say that they're not capable. It just means it's not something that's necessarily they've been exposed to before. So as you said, everything that we've tried to build has been driven by pain points. So I like to sit down with the sector that I'm addressing and hear from them, what do they need? What will help their lives, rather than just what I think is a pretty cool piece of tech. And that's sort of the difference between building for the sake of building and researching and developing technology, or building for the sake of addressing an industry or addressing a market. Because you can have something that is absolutely groundbreaking in research, but no one will pay for it because they've got a bucket of water that works just as well. So we need to talk to them and work with them in a constant collaboration between research, between innovators, between the farmers and the investors, all together to produce products that work and are accessible.
Yeah, but that is the challenge, and that's why we have events like this, because we don't have that smooth relationship yet. So starting at the ground level where you are, should hopefully also meet the research where they're coming towards you, and then the AI should have some, relationship back, which is guided by both parties rather than a standard. And this is really, in my mind, the first time that I've ever had the opportunity to actually fully create what's intentionally my own, and then come and collaborate and see if it actually has an impact on what you're doing as well. Collaboration started early with you because it was your dad who inspired the idea. Do you want to tell the audience just a little bit about the inception? Because
Yes.
co-design is...
Yeah, no, it is. It is the core and the root of my ideas behind collaboration and co-design. 5 years ago, I was working as an aerial photographer. So drones, light aircraft, helicopters. I come from a mixed livestock farm, fine wool merinos and fat lambs. At that point, my dad was 81 and still on the farm. And I was visiting, taking a photo with the drone at the end of the day. And he looked over my shoulder and said, if that can check the stock for me, I can stay on the farm longer. And to me, a light bulb went off. I knew that drones were being used in analysing cropping and plant density and biomass and soil quality. But at that point, there was 2 or 3 companies globally doing anything with drones and livestock in any meaningful manner. And so I knew there had to be something that was built that was machine learning, image recognition, but there was a bunch of categories that it needed to tick off. It needed to work offline because so many Australian farms don't have connectivity. It needed to be simple so that Dad could use it, and it needed to provide actionable information, not just an Excel sheet of numbers. It needed to say, you need to do this or you need to do that. And that was the core of it. These days, we're working with companies like JBS Australia and MLA, and again, it's the same story. They're saying, you know what? What if we could do this? And we say, yeah, let's go. Let's build it. And we work together.
Stefan, we hear from you about that shift from learn to code to learn to reason and validate, and I think it's a really solid theme. How do you actually teach that, though? And where does that training come from in the context that we are here today? Because
it's a very real problem for us, because we might soon have to be teaching it, and what has shifted is we're not teaching technical skills necessarily. We taught the computer to speak English, so we don't need to teach you to speak computer the same way we used to. So we have this other dilemma, and I think it's a very good question, as we had a conversation about this earlier. So I think there's a couple of things that I'm looking at to be able to get value out of one of these large language models, be it Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, Grok, and Copilot. There's really only a handful of these things too. It is quite phenomenal that several hundred software developers and super bright people are building these tools that are just impacting all of humanity. But that's a reality. It is a bit of a winners take all market and very monopolistic. But we're interacting with these models. And like my younger brother's head of infectious diseases at Royal Brisbane Hospital, and he's telling me that in his, because we're having a conversation in the car, and my son was in there too, he's studying medicine. He says, surely, Crispin, you're better at the AI at doing this. And Crispin says, no. Well, like there might be 5 experts from different fields working on a really complex problem for a patient, and we're feeding it into the AI, and it is consistently giving us a result that is better than anyone. It's summarised the infectious disease bit better than I did, and its notes are better than mine. This is happening frequently. But I think what was being missed is, then sort of Max says, well, why don't you just replace you with the AI? What is being missed is he still needs to be able to ask the right question and then validate the output. These are 2 critical things that this is what a lot of our jobs are going to be increasingly about. Asking the right question sounds simple, but it isn't really, not really comprehending the question, the problem, and what you're saying about understanding the client problem, massive. And I personally believe this is something CSIRO wants to invest more effort into, because it is, once you've figured that out, you can actually build the right R&D or tech solution, and it's really quite complex getting there. But the thing is, why would if you put into our hands an AI tool and got us to treat a patient with some sort of weird infectious disease, would we be able to do it? Not really, because we would ask the wrong question, and then the validation bit we wouldn't get. So his expertise still matters, and our expertise in all different fields that we work in still matters. And I think that's it. But it's quite a different workflow that's about to happen. And that is part of what we're teaching with AI. But it might be, I have a theory that when we really get into doing this, and we might have to do it for really big workforces pretty soon, and we're trying to think through with the university sector working with us, and about this question of what are we actually teaching them? How do you actually teach someone to use ChatGPT? And this idea that you can teach prompt engineering isn't a thing. As far as prompt engineering, there even were some university courses around the world springing up to be a prompt engineer, but it's not really a thing, because you'd have these cheat sheets to get ChatGPT to do stuff. They'd last for weeks before they were found to not work properly anymore, or they wouldn't work on this data set, or someone could get this prompt to get the outcome, but the next person didn't. These models are stochastic and highly random and incredibly complex. We don't actually know what happens inside a large language model. It's bizarre.
But that's the challenge for the co-design, though, right?
Yeah.
So we're saying trust something we actually have zero visibility of.
Correct.
On record, it gets majority right. It can certainly lead you down the wrong path if you ask, the first leading question. You don't know how to challenge that, and so that's again the gap. We're dealing with an industry that's very fixed on firefighting, getting tasks done. Knowing that people are out there doing the tasks and feeling, hoping that they get done, but then having to cross-check, and so. The use cases for adoption, the use cases for co-design, how do we scale that to 85,000 farms? I mean, you can co-design with a local business who can then take it to their group of farms, and you're talking to the more mum and dad, smaller organisation. How do we get that message out that co-design can actually start in the living room with an AI platform, with the research data that's being designed and publicly available? We need to find a way. I'm not suggesting we know exactly, but how do you deal with that question when you're working with a prospect who actually has ideas about how they actually want to work within the operations?
Well, I think for us personally, it's very much about understanding that the data that we're talking about, these data sets, there's 2 sides to it. Particularly when you look at image recognition, right? You've got the data set, which is essentially a collection of photos. Many people would think that is the core of what you're training the model with. It's not. That's just one part. The other half of it is the institutional knowledge that I have to find a way, or my team has to find a way to translate into how we use that imagery to train the algorithm. So it's, for example, in a feedlot, taking a photo of a whole bunch of cows, lots and lots and lots and lots of photos of cows. But then it's talking to the pen riders, it's talking to the people on the ground, it's talking to the vets, it's talking to everybody there and saying, what are you seeing in this cow that you've told me to take a photo of? What about it is showing me or showing you that it has a problem, or that it's this healthy, or that disease, or this problem? And then from there, training the models. So that's from a corporate perspective, but you can do that from a mum and pop farm. You can do that for any industry by listening to the doctor who is treating that infectious disease and working out what the prompts are, what the drivers are to training the algorithm. Because, you know, as we've all heard many times, the key thing with AI is put shit in, you get shit out. So you have to put good quality data, which means institutional or learned experience, plus the numbers, plus the photos, plus the core science of it as well.
The risk seems to get transferred along the way, Sophia. So how do we understand some of those risk components, or how do we prepare? How does a room like this prepare when they want to have a collaboration with an idea, with other vendors, or with other groups, institutions? How do you manage that risk transfer?
Yes, I think ways the AI coming into play, and AI has been, automating some decision paths out of the human. So it transferred, or it redistributed those decision powers. But at the end of the day, we know that it's still the farmer who's going to, bear the risk of the loss if something goes wrong. So, then I think, we do need the whole ecosystem to build up the whole ecosystem to support the adoption, right? It should be some transparencies across the board. It should be clearly mentioned, like who is bearing the risk. Is that the vendor, or vendor needs to be very clear about their model. So what is the confidence level of their model, the accuracy level, the hallucinations about the
how do you accelerate that though? Like that slows down. We're dealing with the unfortunate aspect where it's all generally available. So it's generally available. Any one of us can have access to these tools now. We may not use corporate data, but we can start to actually ideate rapidly and now build, user interfaces and back-end databases to actually put it online and get a friend to do, whatever they need to do, right? So you've got these back pocket ute, weed booklets that guys carry out of the ute. Now you can actually have that on the phone, and you can check out a weed and off you go. So the collaboration can happen internally within the business, within the family. It doesn't necessarily. So the risk aspect is very, very challenging.
I think it's very challenging. So we've been thinking about it, how university can play a role in that. So it comes back to those collaboration or co-design problem, I think. Because we're training or uplifting those digital capabilities of farming at scale. It's very, we can't do it in a short time. But those universities or research centers, like within the universities, can play a part. Like for our university, for example, we do have a research center like focusing on the sustainable, like agriculture or food. We're sitting within the university that can help to bring the expertise from the university researchers with those farmers or the producers together to co-develop or co-solve the problem from the very, very start. So that helps to to demonstrate the transparency, the transparent process, and get the farmers involved in the prototyping or product development. So that helps them to understand the process instead of treating the AI or tools as a black box.
But let's be controversial for a second. What if, Stefan? You don't need a university to do the challenging computation or the modelling to then prototype. What if a creative, capable young farmer can actually do that with Claude today? So how do we, again, I think it's down to the education piece.
For CSIRO, one of our risks, I think, is you've got this website, CSIRO, where you can call us up and you can talk to us about some complex industry problem, about how to get lightweight metals for an aircraft or something. and then we work out an R&D contract, and then we deliver that solution. But at what point do you just upload that data into this one called Claude or ChatGPT and ask it exactly the same question, and for your $100 a month subscription, get an answer that works for your problem? And I think that is actually more real than it might not exactly be as simple as that, but it's not too far away. And I think this is a fascinating sort of shift in terms of where we're at. And this is what we really didn't predict very early on. And I think we're in the process of rethinking what some of this means. It is, you know, these tools I'm talking about aren't everything they are to AI. You know, the AI, machine learning, computer vision, these fields were growing, and still people are building AI models on their own data to do specific functions. It needs to be said that I don't mean to just generalize AI and say these tools like Claude and ChatGPT are everything, but they're really significant in their generalizable capabilities, and I think day to day, and what's going to change decision-making, data and dirt, and how it's done is really a big part of it. For me, the thing is decision. My PhD was actually in decision-making and decision theory, and I looked at how people use analytic approaches and structured approaches for decision-making, and then how they do it intuitively and gut feel. And I think some of those thoughts are coming back in that 2026, we'll see AI systems get turned on and really significantly guiding a lot of on-farm decisions, agricultural policy decisions. The agricultural sector is going to start to be shaped by decision-making where AI was here, but it's now taking a much more foreground position.
People are showing up a bit more prepared, right, for the conversation. So if you want to make a decision on buying a product or working with a product, there are these tools now that give us that ability to be better prepared, but we still need the experience. Experience still matters. You know, you don't get the results that you've got in terms of, you know, your accuracy in livestock identification without the experience, without the time. I mean, generative AI is not going to do it without that type of work. Do you want to talk to that at all?
Yeah, I mean, it's this decision-making process. I mean, it comes down to building trust with the users, with the market. And whether that's a trust in Claude or ChatGPT or drone hand software or whatever it may be, it's about building trust. And in the agricultural industry, trust is hard won because they've been burnt a lot. You know, there's been 1 million people in my shoes who've come up and said, we've got this product that'll change your world. And you can hear it again with AI, but AI might actually just be doing that. But to build that trust, we need to be owning what we're doing. We need to be clear about this is a process. Come with us on this journey. There will be mistakes. There will be hallucinations. There will be times when things don't work as well as they should, but it's all going towards building a better model or building a better result. And if you can say to that farmer or to that corporate business that we're going to work with you, that we're going to own our mistakes and own our growth, then we can all move forward with that trust as a collaborative team, as opposed to just, I'm a salesperson, I sold you something, didn't work, now you're never going to buy it again.
Yeah, and I think the opportunity for all of us is in any process that we undertake. You know, there's two branches, one a dependency on data, the other on advice, and perhaps with these toolings we can maybe reduce the core dependencies to be able to get to a point of a conversation, an educated conversation, faster. And look, what we see is farmers now just experimenting, looking at rosters and looking at their spreadsheets and, you know, synthesizing those components and then still relying on their in-field capabilities to execute on a plan. With just a few more minutes left for today's session, if you wanted anyone here to walk away with a shift in mindset or an approach, do you have any parting statements or comments, Stefan?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting time in history. I think I don't want to overstate it, but I do feel like this. I've worked in tech foresight for 27 years in CSIRO. I feel like now is different. Everyone says that, but why? Because of the capacity for reasoning and intelligence from the machine that we've made is just stunning. And anyone who's really got into using these tools and has started to create things, but also its ability to reason on your side to help you comprehend a problem and make a better choice has reached levels that we haven't seen previously. The next 5 years, if the next 5 years of progress is the same as the previous 5 years, we are moving towards something that looks like artificial superintelligence or general intelligence. And here's one thought, right? So we saw IBM make Deep Blue that beat Garry Kasparov, the world's best chess player, in the late 80s, I think it was. Big breakthrough, really significant. Chess, complicated game. That was the first time the computer won. Soon after that, the best players were a human-computer combination for a while, the human and the computer working together. But it didn't last that long. In about a year or so, computers, AI, now wins every game of chess. There's no need for a human anywhere near it. And similarly with the Chinese game of Go in 2018, Lee Sedol, the best human player, was beaten by AlphaGo Zero. The word zero next to one of these machine learning problems means that it had zero human data. It played Go against itself and only itself, and it built its own set of strategies, which are now far superior than any human. So let's put that on the next 5 years of our trajectory about where we're headed. What if we are at the point in Anthropic where 100% of their code is getting written by AI, and really it's not far off that it is building its next version. It is actually designing its next version. Where, I wonder, can that take us to not just co-workers, but massively sort of superior intelligent beings that we're working alongside of? And it feels wrong for me to be talking like this. We just ruled this out when we did because there was all this science fiction stuff and what we'd call hype. I think the fascinating thing about now is that we are putting it on the agenda and trying to figure it out.
Thank you. Sophia.
So good advice. I would say that to everyone is like be open to innovation, be open to collaboration, because you can't do it alone. We need everyone on board, the whole ecosystem to support the adoption, but also be mindful about what the technology can do for you. You need to take the ownership or be accountable for the result. So this is something that,
That's fair.
that
That's good.
Yeah.
And Ed?
Yeah, I mean, I echo both of what my panelists have said, is that we are living in very, very interesting times, and take that in any way you see fit. But I think the most important thing here is that we do it all together. I think it is very important to keep the human in the loop. I think it's very important that we don't discount generational knowledge, and that we can amplify that through great intelligence, through AI workforces and so on. But the best way it's all going to work is if we all work together as consumers, farmers, investors, and regulatory decision makers.
Maybe it was the purple person concept. We have, in organisations, we have red people who do tech, software engineering, coding, Python, blue people who do communication and business intelligence and strategy. The future is owned by the purple person, and I think everyone wants to be a purple person.
And I love that analogy. Yeah. And if you could all just realise that you all have a role to play individually and as a community, and if you can share what you're learning as you're learning, that would be my biggest advice. You know, when I build something because I didn't realise I had the capacity and now I do, and I need to show somebody, I'll call a colleague and I'll go, you won't believe what I've achieved in the last 3 hours. And I'll actually show them my thinking and my process, and then that'll spark an idea for them, and then you see them grow. And so if we can collectively do that, we should be able to design AI for dirt, data, and decision making. Thank you, everybody. You've been great.